studio by Meir Javedanfar, Middle East affairs expert. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
How quickly can we expect this lifting of sanctions to impact the people of Tehran and Iran?
People actually are quite pessimistic. People they were interviewing the New York Times correspondent Thomas Edbring, said people in Iran are not suddenly going to the streets and celebrating because the government has year after year been promising things to them. So I think people are cynical. But I think in the next year, at least in the next 6 months, we're going to see a feel-good factor. Number one, from the return of the confidence of the international community, which will, basically push and motivate Iranians who've been hiding the money under the mattresses and not spending it to go out and spend now. A lot of people in Iran were not spending because they were waiting for sanctions to be lifted so that foreign products come to Iran, better quality products reach Iran, and then to spend their money and then to invest it. So I think at the very least we're going to see a boost in the level of investment by Iranian consumers and also by foreign companies coming to Iran to invest. I think that and opening up of the economy is expected to give 5% rise growth into Iran's economy next year. But let's see if the hardliners allow Mr. Rouhani to have a little bit of peace and quiet at home and not to challenge the West, because a big part of his new budget depends on foreign investment.
Well, you mentioned the budget. What came out of that?
Well, it's $317 billion this year. President Rouhani presented it on the day after the recent implementation day of the sanctions. He was in fact waiting for it. He's 42 days late, according to the Iranian law, in presenting his budget. It was so important for him so that the deal is signed and then to present his budget. The IRGC budget is down this year by, if I'm not mistaken, something like 20%. On other areas, the government is hoping to sell oil at 40%, $40 a barrel, and that's already a concern because right now it's $30 a barrel. And they're hoping to collect more tax money this year because only 25% of Iran's budget income comes from oil. The great majority of the rest of it comes from tax collection. So there again, it's very important for President Rouhani so that the Iranian consumer goes out and spends, that the Iranian investors start investing in Iran's community, in Iran's economy, so that tax returns are up. And it's also important for him to boost Iran's non-oil export. I think this has been yet another rude awakening, these low oil prices, that Iran mustn't be dependent on oil.
And you mentioned that they're hoping to sell it for $40 a barrel, and yet we're seeing some analysts on the street saying that this number can hit even as low as 25 in the coming months.
This is a major concern for the government, but they're hoping that now that there's going to be the return of unfrozen funds, something like $32 billion, confidence is going to return to the Iranian currency. Confidence is going to return to the Iranian economy. And more importantly, the Iranian government very much needs foreign investment. It's very important. President Rouhani is going to France and Italy very soon. It's very important to him to attract investment. We already see that the Daimler-Benz is going to invest in Iran. Other car production companies. Iran is going to invest in its transportation sector. 114 Airbus aircraft have been ordered. It's very important for Iran to develop its tourism sector. But what President Rouhani needs more than anything is political stability, and for the IRGC and other parts of the regime not to go around challenging the West and other Arab countries in the region as they've been doing so.
All right. Well, so far, if you mentioned the budget here, this decline of 20% allocated to them, shouldn't this be seen as a win?
Well, I think it's the relationship between IRGC and Mr. Rouhani has not been very good. I mean, he's really stood up to them. On the one hand, yes, it's a message to the IRGC, but their budget is still twice as much as the army. Their budget, even though it's down 20%, is still twice as much, considering the fact that the army's got 3 times the manpower. The fact that the IRGC gets twice as much more money from them than the army goes to show how much power the IRGC has. So it's a message to the IRGC, but I don't think, I think that because they have their own independent sources of income, the IRGC in Iran has got its own economic arm. It's a company called Khatam al-Anbiya. They are heavily involved in infrastructure projects, in energy projects, in construction projects, in manufacturing sector. So they have their own independent space. So yes, on the one hand, although they are losing some money from the official Iranian budget, on the other hand, they have their own companies which will supply them with their funds.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. Do appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Moving on now to